Well, good morning. Let's get started. We got a lot to cover, and I always try to pack this stuff really in there, lots of ideas. So this one's called Strength Thinking, and this is just a little bit about me. I'm not going to go into any of that. Just stuff that I've done, where I come from, on my perspective with this, and it doesn't matter. Let's just go on. All right, so here are my top 5 themes, and that's a little important because I'm going to present the only way someone with these themes would present, and I know that that's not everybody's, preference. So I apologize on behalf of my themes if I frustrate you, but I'm very strategic. I have a plan for where I'm going to go. My sense of humor is like that. For whatever degree of humor I have, it's always like you have to fill the gap between how I got from where I was to what I just said. And at first it sounds really stupid, and then it might stay that way. Or you might go, oh yeah, I see what you did there. Designing a presentation for an individualizer is really, really difficult because the most important thing that you need, you guys agree, those of you, okay. Yeah, because I'm sitting there working on my computer screen, and what really matters is seeing you all and actually hearing your questions and interacting. So it's not going to allow me to access that theme to its fullest. And in fact, sometimes when I present, I have to suspend my individualization, just kind of tie that arm behind my back. And then ideation is another one that really gets me into trouble. See, I have this little timer I use to tell me how I'm running out of time. Like right now, time is running out. And my ideation is like, oh wait, there's a new idea on the path, And so I have to tie that one behind my back, But what I do is my number 6 is adaptability, so I bring that up off the bench and bring it into the game because adaptability is like, all right, let's focus on what is it time for now, And right now, what it's time for is us to interact a little bit, and then I bring in command, number 7, because sometimes you just need to charge ahead and make stuff happen. Intellection, you're going to see this in here. I'm like always going deeper and deeper into the thoughts, and I hope that's something you find valuable here. But you might find it boring. Some people do. Input. The ultimate intention is that this has utility to it. That you take something from here and you say, I could use this, or I see how this has potential. That's my strongest hope for today. And so this is a framework I use for everything. If I'm being mindful, if I'm really trying to do a good job, I start with, okay, what's my purpose? Because sometimes you get so frantic and there's so many things you want to do, so many places you want to go, but if you just start with your why am I doing this? Why this topic? Is that, well, you can read it. You don't need me to read it. That's my purpose. And then, once I have the purpose clear, purpose is that home you can always return to whenever you kind of go off on your path, like if you have the learner input combo and you go off on your little wiki trails, you're like, oh yeah, okay, get back to the purpose, So, the outcomes that I'm looking for outcomes are what it looks like if I fulfilled that purpose. So, these are the 4 outcomes. It's kind of the general model, and it's in the handout. That those are the 4 outcomes I'm after. So we'll go through those, you'll see. So I start with this slide because this is kind of how I imagine things in my head for StrengthsFinder. It's like before you took StrengthsFinder, you didn't even know you were on this chariot. You didn't know there were these horses pulling you around all day. And then you take your top 5, you get your top 5, you're like, oh my gosh, that's what's going on in here all the time. Like, since I can remember, that, I've been incubating these patterns, and they started off as maybe dirt roads, and now they're like 8-lane highways running through my head, dominating my thoughts and my feelings and my behaviors, and it's a wild ride, because sometimes your themes are going to go off and do their thing, and you don't even know they're happening. So that's like the lights come on. That's the power. That's what's happening when you're coaching or leading a workshop or introducing someone to their themes, that the lights are going on and they don't quite know what to do with it yet. And I want to give them everything. I want to say, okay, now that you know, here's where you go next, and here's what. But you really need time to let it marinate and sink in. I don't know about you, but for me, I had to take StrengthsFinder And then I'm like, that's interesting, and I file it away because I didn't want to throw it away, but I didn't know what to do with it. And then I come back to it, and then maybe I'll talk to somebody about this and get their feedback, someone who knows me well, and they're like, oh yeah, this is how I see this theme. And I'm like, oh, because I didn't even think that, like my input theme, I'm like, I don't even know what that means and why it would even be valuable. And then one of my friends, we go back a long ways, he's like, no man, you always could memorize these quotes and pull them up at the right time. And I was like, amazing. And he said, I used to read quote books to try to do what you do. I'm like, that's not how input works. He goes, oh, well, how does it work? How does input work? And then I didn't know. I was driving along one day and I was listening to a radio interview, and they were interviewing this guy, British comedian, married to Katy Perry, then divorced, can't remember his name, Russell Brand. Thank you. And he was just doing an interview with Terry Gross, and he's like, he said something that was just kind of interesting, it just struck me. He said, I won't do the British accent because I can't. He said, I'm an unreliable witness of my own existence. And then I said, oh, that's really good. Wait, and then I had to practice it in my head, and I'm like, oh, that's what input is. I'm rehearsing it, in case one day I'm at a Gallup conference, and and then it comes out. Yeah, I didn't even plan on saying that. So we're like this. We're like on this ride, and I thought, okay, well, what we want to get to is more like we're in control. Like you could see the image and the difference between the two. And then if you were in my session yesterday on authenticity, what I added yesterday is, as the coach, you are that chariot, you are that carriage, you are that coach that helps convey your clients to greater mastery over those wonderful raw resources they have. And I think of them like raw resources. I think of our themes like these great rivers, like you're pioneering, westward expansion of the United States, and you're like, oh my gosh, we got this great river here, this Mississippi thing, what are we going to do with it? And they're like, we'll set up, commerce along the way. We'll harness the flow of the water, because we can't change the river. I mean, they might shift over time. Or, railway expansion, it's like the smart ones were like, let's set up a town along where the railroads are going to be, and that'll grow our town. And so we can harness our themes like that to kind of grow whatever we want in our life, whether it's a business or whether it's a nonprofit or a purpose. You're harnessing those things that are already there. You can't really move them. So what do you do with them? You understand them and you harness them. Okay, so question, this is the big question, this is what clients ask, this is what coaches ask, is, okay, how do I apply it? And this is where I think things are going now, is that next step. Enough people are starting to become exposed to the themes and see the power of understanding them in this marvelous tool that Dr. Clifton created for us. So now, how do we take it to the next level? That's what we're going to talk about here. So this is my attempt to answer the question. Yeah, this is just important. What I do is an idea fashion show. I'm not expecting you to just hear what I say and be like, yeah, you don't have to argue with me. If you don't like it, you're free to accept, reject, or adapt anything I say. And all three of those options are good. You notice the option up there isn't you can't stand up and yell at me. That's not an option. Like, you can disagree. Just let me at least make a fool out of myself. Don't interrupt that. It could be fun. So I'm going to get on a soapbox here. I'm going to try to keep it really short because I think the soapbox is less and less necessary. Themes are not strengths. And the reason it's important, it's not like, oh, the word police are showing up at your door. It's because I get it. I was walking around for 2 years going, these are my strengths. These are my strengths. And then I read further. I read the fine point. I read it before, but I ignored it. But it was like, your themes are not strengths. But I'm like, but strengths is just easier to say. They sound way more awesome. But here's the evidence for that. These are just quotes from Dr. Clifton. StrengthsFinder's purpose is not to anoint you with strengths, but to find where you have the greatest potential for strength. We introduce you to 3 carefully defined words. He didn't underline them. I did because I was trying to make a point. And like, talents are your naturally recurring pattern. You know this one. And the themes are what StrengthsFinder actually measures. And then knowledge and skills, I brought those in because we're going to talk about those. Those are key components that I had to really think through, and I'm still thinking through. What does that mean? I know what those words mean, but what is the application of knowledge and skills? And then the last one, StrengthsFinder will reveal your 5 dominant themes of Okay, I just go on. I made the point. All right, but you want to take pictures, so you can. So we know the formula. Well, we know the definition of strength is that, and I highlighted activity. That's going to be relevant here. And then here's the definition of talent, and they're not the same thing. So what is the difference between them? And then here's that formula that we're going to start with as our basis there. And so, what's that? Good. Okay. So we start with activity. That's the first thing. Start with the activity that's under discussion, or that's creating a challenge for somebody, or the lack of that activity. Maybe you haven't identified the activity that would help them meet their goals. So it really requires some rigor, though, to really define this activity. Don't just go like, oh, sales. Make it about asking for referral. That's a more specific activity, or whatever. Sales is made up of many, many things, and so to just call it sales will not isolate the activity. So we'll get into that a little bit. Then you need that fuel, and this is the essential ingredient without which you can't have a strength, according to Dr. Clifton, is in order to go from a talent to a strength, or in order to take an activity to the level of strength, it's not just near perfect performance, because I've done things where I was like, oh yeah, I'm a great beginner, I got it right the first time. But I couldn't do it consistently over time because I didn't really care about it. The activity didn't draw me in, it didn't energize me, and all those signs of a talent, which I think I have a slide for. So talent's the fuel, and so we need to audit our talents. I know the word audit is scary, but all it means is to listen. I'm doing this with my fingers to simulate sound waves, I guess. I do gestures. I'm like, why am I doing this one? All right. Knowledge, and the key here, knowledge is intelligence. The etymology of the word intelligent means to choose from among. So if you don't have choices, if you just go with the first thing, the first impulse, the first assumption, you're not as intelligent as if you were to develop some worthy options and then make the best choice. So we want to acquire that, and then skills. So skills are the step-by-step actions that lead to outcomes, because the only thing that produces an outcome is an action. That's how the world works outside of us. I know this because I have all these thinking themes and nothing ever happens. I don't ever get anything done. And so the only thing that gets things done is an action. That's the only thing that produces an outcome. So, and then that's where the skills come in, the executable. Oh, so we got to develop those. Okay, so that's the framework. Like, we could just stop now. But we got more stuff in here. So what I call strength thinking is that thinking is what precedes success in any activity. And some examples. In the legal world, I'm not a lawyer, but I understand that there's a certain way of thinking when you go to law school. It's not just learning the law, it's training you to think in a certain way. Training you to think so you can argue any side of a case. That's why if you know any lawyers, they're heartless. I'm just kidding. You can do that with lawyers. You can make lawyer jokes. Because I have an older brother, and he's a lawyer, and when I told him what I do, he's like, oh, so you're a BS artist. Those of you that know what BS stands for, it's a bad word. And for a lawyer to say that to you is so diminishing. I want to sue him, but it's not going to affect him. I know. Computer programming is another example. There's a way of thinking, and when I read about this, because I don't know anything about computers, but a good programmer spends more time away from the keyboard, really kind of contemplating what they want to do rather than at the keyboard. Right? So there's a certain way of thinking. I was reading an article this morning. Design thinking is this approach to innovation, and it requires a certain way of thinking. You can't just say, oh, let's make a product. Let's just give them. We'll give them what we give them. No, you really have to have a certain way of thinking to create a great, well-designed product. So there's different kinds of thinking, and I think what we need is strength thinking for what we do, to think in a way to train our minds to learn how to identify a client need and apply this thinking, this process, because that's what we are. We're process experts. We're guiding people through a process. And so we should know how to think that process. That's where we add value. Our ability to think in this way is what adds the value. So we can take it further. So now we're going to go through the 4 things. So isolate an activity. I do have this question. Are themes themselves activities? Anybody? Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, let's just let that question hang over our heads a little bit. So here's the definition of activity. It's behavior intended to produce an outcome and usually made up of multiple variables. And in order to be successful, the steps, the activities, our abilities, resources, the sequence is really important too. The sequence in which you do the activity. Which activity are we isolating? That's the big question. That's the beginning, and it has to be done right. And so, are we developing a strength? Can we always develop a strength? Maybe not, but can we develop a competence? If not a strength, is it still worth it? If we don't have the talent, can we take knowledge and skill and still manage that weakness? I want to skip through some of this. I don't know why, but I want to get to something with the visual. I like this idea of 2 types of deficiencies. One is, it doesn't matter. Let's take an activity. I used this example before. It's kind of goofy, but let's say being a submarine periscope operator. I don't know how to do that. I'd probably leave the lens cap on. Although there probably doesn't even have, I don't think the submarine lens, I don't even think that's a thing, but I wouldn't do it right. But it won't matter because I'm never going to get on a submarine. I will never do that. I will never get in water over my shins. And then a type 2 deficiency is it matters. I need to manage this. I need to either develop it into a strength or some level of competence where it's not a weakness. But the ingredient is that it will never become a strength if you don't have the talent, if you don't have a talent applied to it.
Do you mind if I close that door?
Oh, please do. Thank you.
Oh, what am I tripping over?
I was waiting for it to happen to me. I'm going to trip over one of these cords for your entertainment. So, good. So let's, here's some activities. I was tying my shoe the other day, and something happened that hasn't happened in like 30 years. When I went to tie, I made the first little, thing, and then I did the second one where we make the loops, and it just went all the way through, and it just became a knot. I was like, I usually have perfect, consistent performance in this activity, and it failed me this one time. But it made me appreciate all the other times that I did it right, because I never really thought about it. I was like, I'm going, And but sales, time management, these are all different kinds of activities, and I put up some different ones that I think are kind of cool. Like there's an activity. This is a guy who carves sculptures in the head of a pencil. Who would have known? There's an activity that requires strength. There's one, this is a break dancer in crazy legs, and that's just called freeze move, that all of us B-boys can do. I'll do it right, I'll show you later. So, I kind of came up with this. This is inspired by a mentor of mine named Marcia Shank. You should check out her stuff. And the idea is that in any activity, you could be oblivious to it. You don't even know that activity exists. Like that activity of carving lead on a pencil, until now. You didn't know it existed. You were oblivious to it, so you're a bull in a china shop, you don't have any skill in that activity, but then you see it, and now you know what it is, but you're still no better at it, you're inept at it, you graduated to the next level. But let's say you're like, I want to become good at that. I want to do that, it's so cool, I want to do that, I'll impress my friends. And so you've made a decision to invest in the activity, and you seek some sort of coaching or knowledge to grow in it. The steps are going to be awkward. When you're a beginner at something, you've got to risk looking foolish. That's why I don't begin anything. That's why I don't leave my house, really. It's painful. But if you survive that beginner phase, you can perform the basic moves in that activity without breakdown, without failure. You're competent. And you can get to this point even without talent. There's things, I'm competent at time management, but I'll never become good at it. It'll never become a strength for me. You'll see that now. I'm actually proving it. For it to become a strength, we have that definition, that consistent, near-perfect performance, and we can actually begin to teach other people. So if you want to be a coach, I think to develop strength thinking into a strength would be a really valuable investment for you. And we all have the talent for that. We came to a conference to talk about this stuff. It drew us here. It energizes us. It's what we might all have in common, is that energy, that something calls us and it energizes us, and we show glimpses of excellence at it and all these other signs of a talent. But I also wanted to add that maybe there's another level of mastery where you're actually able to innovate within the domain. Others seek you out. And we see this in all different manner of activities where there's people we consider masters. So I'm going to show you this same model again, but I'm going to add some different information to it. I'm going to look at it in terms of talent, knowledge, and skill. So I just skipped past oblivious. They're not worth it. But in F, you're unaware of your talents. You have no knowledge that you've identified to apply to this activity. You have no clue of the basic steps. You're kind of at that non-conscious incompetence level. You don't know how incompetent you are. The next level, you're a beginner. You identify your talents. You start to acquire content knowledge. This is what they teach in schools. I don't get to experience Spain, but I might read about Spain. You know, that's content knowledge. I'll be aware of the steps and I can begin to practice. And now I'm aware of my incompetence. When you're a beginner, you're like, oh gosh, there's so much I don't know here. All right. Then we become competent, so we begin to apply our themes of talent in basic ways. We acquire now experiential knowledge to add to the content knowledge. Then we can perform the basic steps within that activity, and we're consciously competent because you're really aware, like, okay, first I do this, then I do that, like you're making a recipe, making something for the first time. You're like, okay, you're carefully measuring things out. But then after a while, you just know the moves to make. When it's a strength, you apply your talents in advanced ways. You're able to really know, you really speak the language, you're conversant about the themes, you understand how they apply to you. You can combine the content knowledge and the experiential knowledge. You can perform advanced steps, and you're now non-consciously competent. You don't have to think about it. Very efficient. That's why you want to spend more of your life doing those things. So then you can get to this next level of mastery and invent new ways to use those talents. You advance the knowledge. You don't just consume it. You advance it. You perform innovative steps. Like they make moves after people. Like somebody will invent a move and they're like, oh, that's the so-and-so move or whatever. In sports, they do it all the time. And then you're super conscious and super competent. So I think instead of being non-conscious about it, you actually step back down and you become super conscious about what you're doing. And you're so invested and alive in that activity. Okay, so you have a worksheet or a set of handouts. And what I've done here, because I knew I was going to run out of time, there's more content. But the thing is, like, my strategic anticipated that. So you have some thoughts here. And so when you define the activity, there's kind of two parts. The first one is to kind of really define that activity and spend time there. There's some questions, some guidance there for you. And then the second part is to, it asks you some other questions, like describe what near perfect performance would look like in this activity. Why does this activity matter to you? Using that strengths meter, you know, this thing here, that's the strengths meter. Where would you say you currently are? Do you have to perform this activity? Is there another way to get the need done? Why is this activity not yet a strength for you? Because maybe you should say, you know what, I just don't like the activity, I'm bored with it. It's just not my thing, it doesn't energize me, it doesn't interest me. Okay, well then, maybe you could at least develop it to a level of competence if it's a type 2 deficiency, meaning it's important. Or maybe it's a type 1 deficiency, it doesn't matter. Does that make sense? Because that's kind of what we're going to do, that's the rest of this, is then we'll go into now talents, which is the next page. You know, this is the essential ingredient of it. So without a talent, it can't never become a strength. I really like this book because it explained to me what themes are. Anybody else read this? Yeah, just this whole idea of myelin, and it just explains the inner workings of, you know, and Dr. Clifton began talking about it in Now Discover Your Strengths. He dedicates like 7 or 8 pages to kind of just what we knew about neuroscience then, and then it just keeps growing. I mean, what we know about it more and more. So some signs of a talent, you're naturally drawn to it, and what feels like no big deal to you amazes others. This is important when you're coaching with somebody because our themes are hiding in plain sight. There's a story I tell. It's about this boy. He goes to the market with his dad, and he sees a little baby bull, and he begs his dad, "Please, Dad, can you buy me a baby bull?" And the dad finally relents. He says, "Under one condition, you lift that baby bull over your head at least once a day for the rest of its life." And the boy says, I'll do it. He must have responsibility. Because he did it. Every day we lift this baby bull over his head. And then as he grew into a young man, and the bull grew into a full-size bull, he could lift the full bull over his head. It's not a true story. I wish it was. That'd be so awesome. But imagine people hearing about this amazing feat of strength. And so they gather around, and you can imagine what they're saying. "Oh my gosh, that's incredible." And he hears them talking, and what do you think his response is? I wish I never even got this stinking bull, you know? But I do it every day, it's no big deal. And that's how we are with our talents. They give you energy and satisfaction when you engage them. I did something yesterday, I call it the strength meter, where it's like a speedometer from like 0 to 100. I had to make sure I was doing it from your vantage point. 0 to 100. And so as you go through the day, this meter is moving all over the place. Like you're listening to me now and you're like, okay, this is a 3. You know? And then there's some activities that you're out there and you're like, oh, this is amazing. I just love this. Time is flying. I don't even notice it. I don't want it to stop. You know? And you're thriving. And what would happen is if you looked at where your meter was at any particular time, you can see this activity either engaged your themes or it didn't. You learn quickly and easily, you just pick it up. In fact, when you see the instructor doing it, you're like, I could do that. I could probably do it better than them one day. You know, you just have that. In the book Talent Code, he calls it ignition. It's the ignition that gets you started toward excellence. And then, yeah, your performance will show those of excellence. And there's like three or five other, other signs of a talent that I just didn't include in here. But you look for them and it tells you. There's a book I like. The title alone is enough. It's called Let Your Life Speak, Parker Palmer. And that's what it is. Your life is speaking to you when you're going through your day-to-day. It is telling you, I love this. I don't want that. Keep that away from me. I want more of this. You know, but society kind of conditions you a little bit. We get a little domesticated, and it says, oh no, I know you want to do that, but you need to do this. You can tell I have a little problem with that. So when I started trying to help people through StrengthsFinder, I didn't really think about the strengths thinking yet. I was just focused on acclimating them to their themes. So, they finally took the StrengthsFinder, so they know what their themes are. They have to understand that these are mental reflexes, or Don Clifton would say they're your natural responses to the stimuli in your environment. They're unrehearsed. They're natural. They well up from within you, your responses. And so they all have needs and patterns, and I have something around that I call the anatomy of the theme, where I think that all the themes have the same anatomy, but then there's different pieces to it. We don't have time for that at all. So the first thing that I want to have happen is I want people to connect with their themes. I want them to recognize themselves in those themes. You'll have people go, oh yeah, that's not me, or I don't think that should be in my top 5. You know what I think should be in my top 5 is this other one. I had somebody who had significance in her top 5, a student of mine, and she was embarrassed by it. And I'm like, oh, you need to connect with this, because she was a powerful presence. When she shows up, inspiration shows up. And when she leaves, it evaporates. And it's powerful, it's palpable. And so I want her to harness it. I want her to connect with it, not deny it. And people have to memorize their themes. It's a real pet peeve of mine when I meet somebody on an airplane or something, and I tell them, oh, I really like, because I talk to everybody about StrengthsFinder, I'm giving codes out to the pilots and the I want to make sure they can fly that plane right, you know? Like, I want to make sure that this is within their zone of excellence. Matters. And then I'll be like, oh, oh yeah, I took the StrengthsFinder. Yeah, what's your top 5? And they're like, I'll give them 3 seconds before I'm like, wait a minute. You've been given the greatest gift, and you are an ingrate. I mean, I wish I could like record the things going on in my head, because when I end up saying like all that's going on, and I'm just like, oh, okay. So yeah, so you start here, you finish there, but okay, the model wasn't complete. I kind of, there's like a huge gap between this last one. I guess I should finish. So once you connect with them, then you can start to see them, you can observe them. I turned my clock away. I'm talking to Danny because he's my helper. He's keeping me on track. But I can't see the time, so it doesn't count. But you can begin to observe your things happening like I described with input. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got a replicator in my head. It's not photographic memory, but it's like I'm replicating it and just it's stored in there. And I don't know how I developed that. I think I was just lazy, and I just was like, let me just learn something one time if I deem it important. And you can observe it, and then you can interrupt it, which is something you've never been able to do before with your themes, because if you've never taken the StrengthsFinder, you didn't know those horses were in your head, and then you do know, and now you have the potential to interrupt it. Like I'm trying to manage my ideation while I'm talking to you. I feel it. I feel that horse bucking, you know, and it's like, let's do something unscripted and unprecedented. Let's go rogue. I'm like, no, not a good idea right now. There's seriously like 180 people in this room. All right, later then. All right. And nuancing is better than interrupting. But you have to learn to interrupt first. It's kind of like, first let's have a light switch, where our themes are always on, but let's be able to turn them off. But then a dimmer switch is better, so then we can dial it up or dial it down. It's like our voice, you know kids where like everything they say is like loud, and there are some kids, everything they say is really soft. But then as adults, whichever kid we were, we just know the situationally appropriate volume. It's kind of like that with our themes. And so that's the nuance part. But that's only about theme development. It didn't even get into the knowledge and skill part of it. So that's what I better get to. So there's worksheet 2. Knowledge is the information necessary to perform the activity. So I talked about these 2 kinds of knowledge, content or factual. And then there's these Latin terms that sounded really smart, so my intellection liked it. A priori, before you actually experience it, the knowledge you have. Like you might Google somebody and read up on them before you talk to them, and it gives you some idea. Or I can look at your top 5 themes, and it'll give me a really good kind of snapshot of what's happening inside of you and what matters to you. That's why it's so powerful to be conversant in the 34 themes, and then why you need people to take StrengthsFinder so you know their things. And then a posteriori is what happens after you talk to them, and now you've experienced them, and now you kind of got that sense of their personality and all of that. Not all knowledge is equally valuable. Okay, this is important stuff that you will have to, I love this quote, Lo. Good judgment comes from experience, but experience comes from bad judgment. For all you perfectionists out there, that's how we develop knowledge. We need to be out there experiencing the world. That's why our school system needs to engage more of this experiential learning, not just teach to the exam. Okay, another soapbox I could go on. And then the skills. There's general skills and specific skills. General skills of time management. A specific skill would be I know it's only 2 minutes. A specific skill would be like learning how to use getting things done as a specific approach to time management. So there's these different kinds of skills. I just saw this in my research. I was like, all right, let me just add it in there just to show the different flavors of skills. It's like different coffees. this is what you provide as a coach, is that practice, tracking, accountability. Have your clients, work with your clients to really list out the steps so then they can repeat it and perfect it and find maybe there's a step in the process that they're really, really good at that they can take to the next level. Or maybe there's a step in the process where there's a little breakdown and you want to help bolster that one a little bit to help improve your overall performance. So in this handout, I described, flow charting the activity, or really listing and naming the steps could be something that you could do with a client to help them. And then they have to practice. You have to practice the skills, help them track their performance, and provide that accountability. And I love this next thing. I've been thinking a lot about this idea of micro struggles. I don't know if that's a thing, but I said this yesterday in my presentation. I was like, if I want to get in shape, which I kind of do, but I don't, I can't go out and run a marathon, but maybe I can run to the next driveway. That's a micro struggle. Just getting there, just putting on some running shoes, like that. Just do that. That's the micro struggle, and then go run two driveways maybe. And so use that way of thinking to set up micro struggles for your client. Developers are naturally good at this. They just think this way all the time. Okay, we're getting ready for the dismount. Here it is. Thank you. Can I ask a question? Can we have a question here? Question? Can I do a little plug? I'm doing a little telecourse. I've moved to like a couple more people. If anybody's interested in that, just let me know. It's just it's more of this kind of stuff. But any questions real quick? Or no, on your way out you can ask questions. It looks like you got to get to the next thing. The doors are good. Video.